So 51's kind of an interesting question. It says 12 jurors are needed for an upcoming trial. The diagram below illustrates part of the process. The 12 jurors are pulled from a pool of 60 people. So they've got us like a little tree here, but there's 60 people in the pool. Court records show a trend that only 40% of the people who are summoned appear, and of those who appear, a third are excused. All right, so I need to work my way backwards. That means I keep 2/3 of the people that show up. Now, to work my way backwards, I'm not going to do multiplication, I'm going to do division. So 60 divided by 2/3 is going to give me the actual number. It should be 90. 60 is 2/3 of 90. But then again, I'm tired. All right, so it turns out that to get 60 people, 90 people have to be actually show up. Now, of the people you summoned, only 40% show up. So same logic, I'm going to work backwards. Some number times 0.4 is 90. Therefore, 90 divided by 0.4 must be that number. We could write out the algebra if we wanted to, but that's how it works. I have to summon 225 people. And I probably made that more complicated. What you could have done is you could have just taken the numbers. Okay, 800 people. Maybe you thought it was choice E. Only 40% show up. Okay, cool. Of that, I only get to keep 2/3 because a third of them are excused because they're just not worthy. So times 2/3. You can work both ways on these. You can work with the answer choices and so forth, but that tells you you'd have a pool of 213. Now, my choice was D, so I take my 225. Only 40% of those who are summoned actually show up. That's 90. And only 2/3 of those will actually make it to the jury pool. 60. What is the 275th digit after? I never liked these kind of questions. The 275th digit after the decimal point, 0.6295. Oy. So what I'm going to do is, this is 4 decimal places. I'm going to take 275, divide it by 4. So what I've learned is 0.6295 repeats 68 times. Now what's left is 0.75. I'm going to take away the 68. What's left is 3/4 of that decimal. There's literally 3/4, or 3 of 4 pieces of the decimal left. So that's going to be 0.629. It's going to stop on that 9. Choice K. Because I'm interested in the third piece. 53. Given that f of x is x squared minus 1 and g of x is x plus 3, what are all the values of x for which f composed of g of x is 0? You do need to understand function composition. You need to understand that you're going to take that and put it right here. And that's really actually about all you need to know. You don't actually have to make this as hard as you want. You have a TI frickin' 84 in your hands, and you want to know when that is equal to 0. There are lots and lots of ways you could solve this by hand. You'd add 4, you'd take the square root, you subtract 3, I believe. Anyways, you're going to have -3 plus or minus 2. That's going to be your answers, -3 plus or minus 2. I feel like the correct answer to this is A, but I'm going to assume that you're like the average kid in Algebra 2 and you don't have a clue what to do. So I'm going to put this in Y1, and that's true. The average kid doesn't know what to do unless somebody's sitting there saying, this is what you need to do. And even then they're like, are you sure about this? Are you sure, Milbrath? Anyways, y1, y2. Zoom 6. And solutions happen where we intersect. Second, trace 5. Get close. Enter, enter, enter. There's an answer. Second, trace 5. Get close. Enter, enter, enter. And there's the other answer. And there's other ways of doing this problem, no doubt. Again, I didn't say I was necessarily going to be showing algebra in these things. Given that p is a positive number, n is a negative number, and the absolute value of p is greater than the absolute value of n, which of the following expressions has the greatest value? Now, what you are going to have to do, because you can cheat your way through this, but you are going to have to create a value of p. All right, I'm going to let p be something like 10. You never use small numbers. Ever, ever, ever. And the absolute value of p has to be greater than n. Now, n is supposed to be negative, but n is going to be something like -6. Because the absolute value of 10 is greater than the absolute value of -6. I couldn't let n be something like -12. It had to be something numerically smaller and negative. And it says, which of the following expressions has the greatest value? And again, I just am going to use calculator. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to get back to the main display here. I'm going to take it 10. I'm going to store it to p. Alpha, oh, where's that p? 8 is the p key. I'm going to take a -6, hit the store key. I'm going to store it to n. Alpha n. The absolute value bars are under Math, Num, ABS. If you like fractions, you go to Math, Num, hit the up arrow, n over d. And we have p minus n, so p minus, lost it. I found it earlier. That's my only issue with this strategy. That is my only issue, is finding the darn letters. Anyways, that returned 8/5. So I want the greatest thing. I'm going to have to run through them all, every one of them. I'm going to recycle some stuff here. I notice the next one's still p minus n, but it's sitting over n, so I'm going to do some replacement. Alpha n. That returned 8/3. What's bigger, 8/5 or 8/3? Let me write these down, because that's going to be an issue for some kids. There's some kids who don't know. That was 8/5, 8/3. Whoops. This is p plus n. Notice I'm going up, I'm arrowing, I'm highlighting, and I'm going to use the overtype. Plus, the bottom is p minus n. So alpha p minus, and this should be smaller, 1/4. Here we have p plus n over p. Delete, delete. 2/5. Let me write those down because I'll forget them. 1/4, 2/5. And the last one's p plus n over n. Which is going to be bigger than 2/5. Or is it going to be negative? It's going to be bigger. Alpha log brings that up. 2/3. Now, your choices are these two numbers, and I've done this a while. I would say 10% of students think 8/5 is bigger than 8/3. It's not It's the biggest answer. Or sorry, it's the smaller answer. I even said it wasn't, circled the wrong thing. There I go. But anyways, if you're that kid, the correct answer is 8/3. Forgive me if I'm misspeaking. 8/5 as a decimal is 1.6. 8/3 as a decimal, 2.667. So we should have been picking choice G. I went the long run on that. I pushed nothing but buttons. I am a little curious if a TI-84 can do this one or not. The TI-84 has an IQ, so I'm a little curious if it can do it or not. Let's see, let's go to math, num, n over d. The I key, if you've never seen it, is the second decimal point. So there's I plus second decimal point squared plus, I think it might be able to do this because they didn't take the power of I too far, to the 5th. If not, I'll just work it out by hand. Second decimal I to the 3rd plus I to the 4th, which is by definition 1, but a lot of kids struggle with the concept of imaginary numbers. Just blows their mind. Who cares if it's imaginary or not? And I have a typo. It's right there. That was supposed to be a 3. Don't do something stupid like think that these things cancel, like you can't cancel I cubed and I cubed. It doesn't work. There's plus signs there. Anyways, I'm going to press enter. It said data type. I was a little curious about that. I didn't think it could. So, anyways, turns out TI-84 can't do it. Thought it might, because it can do some things. Like the TI-84 can actually tell you, and I guess you could cheat with the TI-84. Like if you do second I to the 2nd, it'll tell you it's -1. And if you do I to the 3rd, it should say -I. So I'm already learning some stuff here, what I can do. All right, it told me that was -I, it told me that was -I. If I haven't memorized what I to the 4th is, I'm pretty sure it'll tell you it's 1. Now the issue is can it do I to the 5th? Oh, it can. So look at all the things it just told us. It told us that I squared was -1. It told us I cubed was -I. Down low, again, it told us I cubed was -I. It told us I to the 4th was a +1, and it told us I to the 5th was a -I. I don't know why I wrote 8. Now, if you had to look along the top, you have I minus I. Those guys cancel each other out. And we'll just do this in 2 steps. You guys think I'm not making some stuff up? It should have said I. Did I read the calculator wrong? Yeah, it said I to the 5th was positive I. I'm canceling these two out because in the numerator they cancel each other out. Now, if you look at the bottom, you have a -I and an I, and they cancel each other out. And you get -1 over 1, which is -1. 56, in one of the following graphs in the standard XY coordinate plane, the solution set to the system of inequalities is shown stated. Which one? So I'm going to do the thing that every 8th grader in the United States of America can do. And every 8th grader in the US should be able to place x plus 2y less than or equal to 6. Do some math here. Wrong symbolism. 6 into y equals mx plus b form. They should be able to. So 2y The software I'm using here doesn't do so hot on pulling out keys. If I shift the x right, it becomes negative plus 6. Divide by 2, y is going to be less than or equal to, I can type it, negative x over 2 plus 3. Now, the big thing on this is I see the inequality symbol, that less than equal to symbol is a solid line. And since it's less than or equal to, I shade below. So what does that do for me? That takes two of the choices off the menu. It has to be solid. And again, these are 8th grade math standards that I'm addressing right now. That one's gone. Shading below, that one's gone. You went from a 1 in 5 to a 1 in 3. Now, what else do I know? I know that the slope is negative 1/2, which is downhill, left to right. I know that. That's what I was taught when I was in middle school. I can throw out j because j is uphill. I may not know what's going on here, but because I understood y equals mx plus b, I eliminated 3 choices. So I have to be either k or f. Now, the other lesson is what used to be in Algebra 2 in Tennessee, but it was removed from Algebra 2 in Tennessee. It was shoved into geometry, and I don't think it's taught. I really don't. I could be wrong about that. But let's take that second equation, 3x to the second. We're going to shift actually this one won't be too bad. This one would be taught. Problem is kids don't remember it. Cannot get kids to memorize form. Greater than 12. I shifted everything left. Divide by 3. And I get greater than 4. The big issue here is that symbolism. You may not realize what this is, but the symbolism is saying shade outside. And the reason I say you may not realize what that is because this is a circle. That's the form x minus h to the second plus y minus k to the second, and technically equal to a radius squared. The reason it's x squared and y squared is because the center is at 0, 0, and the radius would be 2. But the greater than symbol is saying shade outside of me. Shade outside of me. Because it's saying shade outside of me, I can't be this one. I guess maybe I could, but it's above the frickin' line. The best choice for this one is K. You are completely shaded outside of the circle, and let me think about that. I do need to think about that. My equation from earlier, it was y less than or equal to negative x over 2 plus 3, right? So notice that's at plus 3. If the circle only has a radius of 2, the line would intersect the y-axis above. Oh yeah, there's some complications in there. That's believable. But the choice has got to be K. 57, let A, B, C, and D be real numbers given that A times C is 1, B plus C over D is undefined. Interesting. And A times B times C equals D is 0. So let's talk about that undefined thing. Undefined means you attempted to divide by 0. That's what it means. So what did I learn? I learned right here that I attempted to divide by 0. So D is 0. I am told that A times B times C is D. And I know that A times C is 1. So I'm going to place A and C with 1, which means that 1 times B equals D. And I know that D is 0, so B is almost also 0. It's a true statement. The correct answer is choice D. B is 0. And A can't be 0. If A was 0, this wouldn't be true. If C was 0, this couldn't be true. I don't know. I don't know what kind of special you are if you pick A, but you is special. This could be true. It could be. There's no doubt about it. They could both be 1. Could be, and that's the issue. It could be true, but it must not be. It's not a must be true. This would not be true, because if one of them was negative, you wouldn't get a positive. B plus C is equal to 0. Could be true, but this is the only one that must be true. 58, a cosine function shown in the standard XY coordinate plane below. Now, my juniors have not seen this kind of stuff, and I don't know that they will. It just depends if they take pre-calc their senior year or not. And a lot of kids in Tennessee don't see this kind of stuff. It's not in Algebra 2 anymore. Pretty sure it's supposed to be done in geometry, but I hadn't looked too closely at their standards. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at the way this graph is set up. It goes up 3, down 3. So I'm going to go to Window. I'm going to change the Y minimum to be negative 3. I'm going to change the Y max to be 3. And I notice there's a tick mark here at pi over 2, which means this would be negative pi over 2. So the minimum I'm going to do, and I could extend that out to pi or whatever, but I'm really interested in seeing just some of this graph. I'm going to take the x-min and make it negative pi over 2, and notice that's exactly what I'm typing. And the x-max is going to be positive pi over 2. And again, what I'm going to do here is I'm basically only going to be looking at part of the graph. I'm going to throw away all of that, and I'm going to throw away all of that. That's how I'm going to do it. So what I'm hoping is I just see this stuff after I get things lined up properly. I just want to see that. That's all I want to see. What is she? She's probably some sort of negative, some sort of, actually, would it be sine? It's cosine. Cosine starts high and falls. It's a cosine graph. Earlier in this video, I think I changed my calculator over to degrees. Notice these right here, pi over 2, that's what's called a pi radian. So I'm going to change my mode back to radian. I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to type in these functions. I'm not going to try and teach you how to graph a trig function right now. That's a whole nother lesson. And you may not be there. But I am going to teach you how to cheat in a TI-84. So anyways, I typed it in. I usually do a Zoom 6 with kids, but I played with my window. And you can already tell that this is not it, because this doesn't look like that. So, moving on with my life. By the way, you notice it only hit 2? The next one's only going to hit 2. They've introduced a 3x here, which is going to be a little closer. Still not going to be the right answer, because it's only going to peak at 2. It's going to fall to 2. And I'm seeing too much stuff drawn. So, not it. I'm kind of tired of typing in the wrong answers here, but whatever. 3 cosine x over 3 is not going to be it. As soon as you press enter, you can see it, but it did hit that 3 up top. We have x over 2, which is also not going to be it. These are actually making the graph wider, and this graph has been compressed. It's had a horizontal compression done. Not it. I think I'm ready for choice K. which I'm very confident is the correct answer. And it is. It's drawing everything that I covered up, everything except what I covered up. 58, 2 to go, and this video is done. The figure below shows a flying kite. At a certain moment, the kite string forms an angle of elevation of 75 degrees from point A on the ground. At the same moment, the angle of elevation of the kite at point B, which is 240 feet from A on level ground, is 45 degrees. What is the length in feet of the string? There we go, X. To do this, you're going to use something called law of sines. And the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to figure out this missing angle, which is 180 minus 75 minus 45, which should be 60 degrees. Now, this is a geometry standard. It's called the law of sines. And again, it is a geometry standard. 10th grade math for most people. But it says that the sine of angle A is to side A, as the sine of angle B is to B, and there's a third piece, as sine of C is to C. It says the ratio of trig ratios to corresponding sides has to be the same. So if I want this X, it compares to 45 degrees. The sine of 45 degrees compares to X as this angle up here, which was 60. The sine of 60 compares to 240. I don't think there's very many people in this world who know that the sine of 60 degrees, if I'm thinking right, is root 3 over 2. It's something you learn in a trig class. If you had trig, you would know. I mean, you wouldn't be pushing buttons. You would know that the sine of 60 degrees is root 3 over 2. And you put that right there. But you haven't had it. So what you're going to do is you're going to cross multiply. 240 sines of 45 degrees is equal to x sines of 60. And to play the isolation game, you're going to divide out the sine of 60 degrees. And notice, these are degrees. Those are degree symbols. So I'm going to have to pull up my TI-84. By the way, that's the solving step. I'm going to have to pull up my TI-84. I just played with it, put it in radian mode. I'm going to have to put it back in degree mode because those are degrees. And I'm going to type in what I just wrote. And I wrote 240 sins or sines. Don't be the kid who pronounces it sin, by the way. That's done in the back seat of a car. Divided by the sine of 60. I got 195.959174, which is not an answer you see. And like, don't be dumb and pick 180 because it's closer. Like, plug some stuff in. See what 60 root 3 is. Of course, 60 root 3 is not the answer. But 80 root 6 might be. And it would be because you'd also know the sine of 45 is root 2 over 2, and you do this all by hand. But there she is. She's 80 root 6. If you're smart enough to do law of sines, be smart enough to push buttons in calculator. A publisher charges $15 for the first copy of a book that is ordered and $12 for each additional copy. Which of the following expressions represents the cost of Y books? Now, this is kind of straight up MX plus B. The initial copy is 15, so plus 15. The change in what you pay is 12. Now, what they did is they tried to make it a little more confusing because they talked about Y. That's all they did. Bam. Done. That's how hard the last question was. And that is the 2023-2024 Preparing for ACT Math section. I've spent a good chunk of time on this today. You are very welcome for it. I hope you get into college, and I hope you get the scholarship you want.